Okay, the next thing that we'll be showcasing here in the Mac environment is the dock. So the dock can be found at the bottom of your screen here, and on the Windows side of things, this would be sort of the equivalent of the taskbar within Windows. So the dock essentially contains shortcuts to all of the applications that you've placed there. So in this case, I have shortcuts to applications that I use most frequently, like you see Photoshop here, Preview, maybe Firefox, or some of the other applications. Now, if I actually click on an application, that launches the program. And I'll go ahead and quit that for a second. So if I single click on any application, that will open up the application. But instead, if you click and hold and don't let go, you get a few more options. One of which says remove from the dock. So if you don't want one of these shortcuts here, you simply choose to remove it. Mine, this application in particular, this is Firefox, is set to open at login. You'll note that it's checked by default. So if you want any application to automatically open at login, you would simply enable this feature. Let's say that you're someone who always listens to music whenever they are, surfing the web or something like that. Then you might choose to have iTunes on the Mac open at login as well. The next option says Show in Finder. So this basically reveals wherever this application resides on your computer. And then lastly, which will give you the exact same result as if you single clicked on an application, is to actually open up that application. Now next, the dock has several views that you won't necessarily see if you're clicking on an individual shortcut to an application, but you will see if you actually click on an area such as downloads. So by default, downloads is an option that should be shown on a computer, on a Mac computer. If I click on downloads, then depending on how many icons or how many files I have in my downloads folder, I might see this in a different view. Right now it happens to be shown as the fan view, but if I control click on this same area, then again I get more options. So again, I'm going to click off of it for a second and control click on it, and that would be either right clicking essentially on the Windows environment, but on the Mac you can hit the control button and click. Okay, so when you do that, you'll notice again that the current view is a fan view, but I'm going to go ahead and change that to a grid view instead and do the same click. Okay, so you'll notice now that it opens up in a grid view, and you see little thumbnail icons that might come in handy for you. Next, I'm going to go ahead and change it to a list view and then click on it one more time. So now obviously each of these gives very different looks to this depending on the type of files that you have within here. One of these might be better suited. Now when it comes to me clicking on applications, I particularly like the grid view because it gives me a thumbnail representation of all of my applications. That's kind of nice. Now the last thing that I want to showcase here, actually I have two more items, one of which is preferences. So to get to preferences, you can go to up at the very top to the Apple menu and choose System Preferences, and then you'll find Dock right underneath that. But personally, I like to click on that little highway, this little divider between the actual applications and my own folders on the right hand side here. So if I click on that little striped highway line there and control click, I get those same exact options. So one of the options is magnification. So if I turn on magnification, now you'll notice that as I scroll through the icons, they obviously get bigger. If I go back and again that same highway area there and control click, I can hide the dock, meaning that when I'm not using the dock, it goes away and it won't be revealed again until I actually scroll down to that area. Now if you ever come into the Mac environment, the Mac lab, and see that there's no dock, don't worry, essentially someone has just chosen to hide the dock. So in this example here, the magnification is kind of big compared to the normal default icon size. So if I go ahead and adjust that by going into Dock Preferences, the magnification I can change just by dragging that little slider to not be so drastic. Okay, I'll go ahead and get out of it here and go back to control clicking in the middle there. And another option here that some people like to change is the position on screen of the dock. So by default it's at the bottom, which should probably come in the most handy if you're coming from the Windows environment, but some folks like to have it on the left hand side of the screen. and then it shows up on the left hand side here. And I'll go ahead and switch it back to the bottom, and I'm going to turn hiding off, by the way, and then position it back to the bottom where it should be by default. Alright, so if you ever want the full list of options, you can just control click there and choose dock preferences. Now the last thing that I'm going to show you is how to actually add a folder or an icon to the dock here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this application. So again, this has a thumbnail view of, or grid view of each of my applications. If I click and drag it off, you see that little cloud poof, it goes away. Now to get it back, I'm going to go ahead and go to my hard drive and then find the applications folder, drag it down to the dock. Now I can actually only place it on the dock, or the dock will create room for it only on the right side of that highway divider, because it's not an application. So if it were an application instead, I could drag it to the left side of that divider. Now I'm going to drag it to the right side and let go. Now it shows up where it showed up previously. So those are some of the many options you have available for the dock, which is again called the taskbar on the Windows side.